do it.
I usually go on for a minute and just don't tell people that I'm going on. But you're
good.
dialed in on me. You're like,
It's happening already. I already know that it's happening. Do you start your podcast with like a tagline like, hey, welcome to History or Whatever with James Menon III. We're going to talk about Julia Child or whatever.
I mean,
Is that it?
That's what I was shooting for. You nailed it.
Perfect.
Done.
Great. Tagline done.
Yeah.
Get into this bitch.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about the legend. That is Julia Childs. But first, why don't you introduce yourself? Or I'll introduce you. This is
please.
Comedian Jen J.
Thank you. Thank you. Round of applause.
Hey, one of my favorite. Let me see here. Do I have one? I think it's. Oh, that's not it. Let me see.
This is so far advanced. I love it. I loved that. That was cool.
I don't know that we even got that. Let me see. It should be recording.
Well, I could make it with my mouth. It just was like ba-dum-ching.
Yeah, let me try that again. Let's go with that.
Perfect.
Jen J, everybody. All right, now shut up. All right, thank you. We're when I walked in, we happened to be in Jen J's kitchen for a special reason, and I knew that it was special as soon as I walked in here, and the smell was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it's too bad that you can't have smell airwaves, because it smells very special in my house right now, for sure.
And it hits you like a warm blanket.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. It's real nice. Just in case you're wondering why my house smells so great, I made Julia Child's Beef Bourguignon. And it is still simmering away in the oven. It's probably got another half hour or so. So, yeah, it has enveloped my entire house with the smell of delicious braised beef.
Yeah, and it's nice to sort of just waft it in. So this is one of Julia's recipes, right?
Yeah, it is. This recipe was one of the first recipes that she cooked on her TV show in 1963 when it began. And I mean, of course, there's way more to the story before 1963, but as far as the recipe for beef bourguignon goes, it's a classic French dish that it's peasant food, really. It's not super fancy woo-woo stuff. I mean, it's braised beef. She prefers chuck roast for this. Like, that's not a prime cut, it's because anything that's going to be cooked slow and low, you don't have to use tenderloin or whatever, the fattier, richer meats. You can use the stuff that the cow stood on, yeah.
The stuff that's a little tougher.
Yeah,
right?
You can use that stuff for this. So
yeah, well, and tell us a little bit about your background too.
Okay, yeah. So my first job was cooking. Well, actually, my very first job, I wouldn't call it cooking. I worked at Taco Bell. But I had...
There's the bean gun. That doesn't count?
No,
the bean gun doesn't count?
There were a lot of guns. There's no bean gun. That's a myth.
Oh, I thought it was just like, what is that, the sour cream then?
Yeah,
like a caulking gun?
And guac were both in guns. Yeah, for sure. And,
but the bean is a myth.
The beans are totally
All right.
gross. Like, they were like Frosted Flakes, and you add hot water. Yeah,
dehydrated.
They were nasty. Yeah. Yes, they were.
Space.
It was some bullshit for sure. And I'm sure that they still are. But I had a friend. My friend, shout out Eric Leverson. He worked at the country club out by Gun Barrel City, where I went to high school in Texas, and so, like, him working in the kitchens, we would come and pick him up, so that we could all go hang out, and we would pick him up, and he would be wearing his, chef coat and the checkered pants, and I was always like, what'd you cook today? And I want to hear all about it. And after high school, I knew I wanted to go to culinary school, but I didn't do it in Texas. I moved out to California and went to culinary school in Long Beach. And and that was, let's see, I graduated from culinary school in 1999, and I cooked it pretty much ever since. I mean, I did go to nursing school somewhere in there, but I never
for
actually.
a minute. You're a nurse in school for a minute.
Yeah, But I always ended up, even after nursing school, I always ended up finding my way back into the kitchen. It's always been a place for me. I've very much enjoyed cooking all over the U.S. In Texas, in California, here in Oregon. Really, just those places. So not really all over, but I've cooked a lot of different types of restaurants.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a different kind of restaurant in Texas than there is here. It's different. That's what it's different down there.
It is different,
and people in Texas know what we're talking about.
It is very true. But yeah, so that's my background. I cooked for a long time, about 25 years professionally.
All right. So she was born Julia Carolyn McWilliams.
Yes.
On the 15th of August, 1912.
Yeah, can you imagine being alive in 1912?
1912.
In Pasadena, California.
That's right. Pasadena, California. And it seemed like, her... I think maybe that's where we just need to start, right?
Yeah, for sure.
1912.
Yeah. Yeah, what was going on in the world in 1912, James, Mr. History?
Oh, well, of course, that was getting pretty close to the old First World War.
Yeah, I thought so.
So, 1914 to 1918. So she, at the end of the First World War, Julia Childs was like 6 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. So she might have gone through like rationing, like food rationing, or, her parents probably had to worry about that because that was the thing, wasn't it?
Well, for the Second World War, for sure.
Okay.
Because, and it's interesting. She actually had a degree in history.
Mm-hmm. I know.
That's like when she went to college, she got a degree in history. And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because this is history and whatever. We love that.
Definitely. And another like she thought that she would be a writer. Like that was what she thought that she would do, and she set out to like write articles, but she really wanted to be like a novelist, but then it didn't really pan out for her, right? Like
yeah, so from what I
I just went to career stuff.
There's
started
no
with
like
birth,
order
so.
to it. Well, that's right, because I guess in 1935 she like moved to New York. And things just didn't really work out for her. And then she moved back to Pasadena in 1937. Actually, it seems like I have a quote here. So one of the quotes from Julia Childs, I was 32 when I started cooking. Until then, I just ate. Because she was 6'2".
She was 6'2", yeah, and she played all the sports in school. She played like tennis. She played, God, I don't remember what the other ones were, but she played like 3 different sports in.
Basketball.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, yeah. Basketball.
I saw her like some interview where she was like, "Oh, all I ever did was a jumping center." In the earliest days of females playing basketball.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one reason why I wanted to point out that she was born in 1912.
Yeah.
Because, I'm blanking on this. Well, it's like 1922, or I believe is when women got the right to vote.
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong on that date, but it was in that early 1900s, 20s, 30s, right there, and that was when the whole bras.
This is the part where I think it's really important to note that she was so she went to boarding school. Like she was, your average American doesn't get the chance to do boarding school, and so in that environment that's a little bit more affluent, there's more opportunities, for both genders, surely, but for women, uh, in the situation of like getting to go to boarding school, the sports are different, like everything, just everything is different. It's a little bit more. There's more privilege. There's more opportunity.
Yeah, well, and that was something that I thought was interesting about Julia, was because, okay, so you mentioned she was going to be a writer, and she got that degree in history. Well, she ended up moving. She was in World War II. She was in the Office of Strategic Service, I believe,
Yes.
which was the precursor to the CIA.
Yes.
So she was in there filing documents.
She was filing documents, but she was also keeping track of soldiers. And so the biggest thing that she's known for in her time at OSS was she wrote down the names of over 10,000 soldiers. And she would write their names down and file them in like a card catalog. So can you imagine how anal your mind would have to be in order to
Wow.
I mean, like she would have them organized and shit. Like, like you'd be like, we have Dewey Decimal System. There's some rhyme and reason to how those things get organized. And so all of these soldiers, she would have them like card cataloged and stuff. And she, one of the things did you hear about the shark? Okay.
What,
So-
sharks?
Shark repellent. Yes.
Shark repellent.
So, as she's in the OSS, she is chatting around the water cooler as one does, right? And every frickin' day, these guys are talking about how their attempts at torpedoes through the water, their attempts at torpedoes keep getting thwarted by sharks being curious about what it is, and then they just end up blowing up sharks and not the enemy. And so so Julia was like, well, we should develop a shark repellent, something you could put in the water that the sharks don't like, and then they won't come, and then you can shoot the torpedo through that area. And they were like, brilliant, like, okay, make it up. And that was the first thing that she ever cooked, was developing a recipe for shark repellent. And guess what? They still use it to this day. And that is serious, for real.
What do sharks hate? What?
Well, that's a
Do you
deep dive.
boil like a skunk anus, or what do you got to do?
I kind of think that they would like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, but that's a great question. Like, maybe
But they still use that.
maybe like trees or something that's very like above ground, like these pine needles or something. I don't know.
Needles, yeah.
Something underground, like, in water. Seems like they wouldn't really like stuff that.
Ooh, dentists, no.
Yeah, it's full of dentists. Exactly.
It smells like dentists around here, sharks. We gotta
Sorry,
go.
Burt Walpack, has nothing to do with you. I swear.
Dude,
Other dentists.
You don't
want
want to work on a shark anyway. They got so many rows of teeth. Can you imagine how many cavities from
my
eating all those
goodness.
boots? Okay.
Oh, they
Where
have
were we?
insurance,
Shark
though.
repellent.
Okay.
That was a cool thing that I did not come across that.
Yeah.
That's really funny. And it just adds to her like amazing category.
Yeah.
Which we're going to go over quite a bit of that. So she's at these, she's handling these top secret documents. She's filing them. She's keeping track of soldiers. She's inventing shark repellent to help the cause. And she was transferred to some a place in China, I believe. I couldn't write it down because I couldn't spell it. But where she was transferred to, she got to know Chinese food, and she really liked Chinese food, but apparently not the Szechuanese, I guess, or the really spicy Chinese food. She just didn't care for it, but she really liked a lot of Chinese food, and that was like her first exposure to really good cuisine.
The other part is, I don't know if meeting Paul was on your list, but
so that's one of the reasons why she traveled around so much, is because she met her husband, Paul Childs.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he was a part of the same kind of service, and he moved around all over the place.
He was employed by the OSS like she was. And
propagandizing stuff. He was making like political cartoons and
yeah. And I don't know too much about Paul, but what I do know is that him and his family, like he grew up with people who ate food, like they had good palates, like his family was mildly worldly for the time period, and so he was integral into Julia, like getting like really developing a sense of palate, because they would travel together. And
right.
He also has a background of he was an artist and a writer in Paris, and so going through Paris with him was part of what helped develop her palate, and her love for French cooking was like, I think that his influence was a big part of that.
Well, being able to go to France, and they lived in France and had like a summer home there for all the time, because let me see, when they were done with the service in 1949, that
was exactly where they went.
So let me see here. It wasn't 49. 49
it was 48. It was 48.
48 because 49 is Le Cordon Bleu. And then
she met the other two right around there too. The two ladies. I can't think, their names totally escape me, but
it was the three.
The Les Trois Gourmands.
The Les Trois Gourmands.
Yeah. And they started a cooking school in Julia's kitchen, and the three of them would teach home cooks how to cook food, man. And then they started writing a cookbook, and which ended up being the ultimate Julia Child cookbook.
Well, before we get into that, I wanted to ask you.
I am skipping a lot.
Well, her time at Le Cordon Bleu, the way that a couple of things were presented but sort of glossed over. So at this time period, 1949, in Paris, it was a very male-dominated trade, right?
Yeah.
And is that still the case?
Oh, hell yeah.
It's still mostly males that do the cooking, right?
But like there's been strides. Like I'll tell you, when in the 90s, I was laughed at by men in the kitchen. Like they thought it was ridiculous that a woman would want to be a chef. And
what?
There were just there were so many in 1996 and 97, when I was getting my first kitchen jobs. I was often the only woman in there, and in California, a lot of times I was the only person who spoke English, and so that also presented challenges. When you have a language barrier, it makes it, and you're the odd person out. It makes it a really difficult person to. It makes you a difficult team player. You know,
right? Well, and then it's like, think about 1949,
right?
American,
right?
Julia Childs.
I will
France.
say this though. This is the thing about it though. So I don't think that most women of that time like would have even considered the idea that they would go to Le Cordon Bleu. Like I just don't. I don't think that it was much of a thought. You know, that like she did meet her other two ladies, you know, but they're literally teaching women to, like, women who are trying to fulfill their, you know, their gender role or their, you know, whatever. And so I just don't think that there were very many women like trying to be in Le Cordon Bleu. And then if they were, they would have to pay for it, you know.
Oh yeah.
And like again, like, let's check her privilege. She was in a situation where, like, I mean, she's been to college by this point. Like, she's served in the military. She's newly married to a worldly, travel-y, like refined palate kind of a guy who's like, oh, you want to do this, honey? Sure, let me write you the check or whatever. Like, and so I'm sure at first it was seen like, let the tall lady come to the class. It is fine. That's just my guess. Like, oh, her check cleared. Yeah, she can come to class. Like,
well, they definitely gave her the old kitchen heave ho. From what I understand, like the professors and stuff, the head chefs, they didn't really want her to come in, and they were pretty snooty about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, but after a while, like Julia Childs just won them over.
Yeah,
and that was one of the cool things and it crossed my mind that maybe they started this cooking school because they knew that it would be hard to go out and find a restaurant that would hire them, even though they've been through the courses.
Yeah.
And then they just smashed it with that cooking school. And the other two, like, they stayed in contact or whatever. One of them fell off. The other helped write the book a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so that first book, let me see, what was it called?
It was Mastering the Art of French Cooking.
Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And that took 9 years.
Yeah, and part of it is because they submitted it to Houghton, whatever, the publisher, and the publisher rejected it because it was too much like an encyclopedia. Because, like, I mean,
well,
yeah, like, me and my girlfriends just writing an encyclopedia of a whole style of cooking, no big deal. Like, what a freaking badass.
Yeah. Well, so, and that book was eventually published in 1961. And the thing is all of those measurements that she made for that book were done in the European style. With I believe it's like ounces, and you weigh it everything out, and
imperial,
okay. And then when you take that book to be sold in America, all of those have to be converted.
Yes.
And that was something that was
that's
that people
still
talked about.
An issue, if you can believe that, it's still an issue.
Oh,
like we should just switch to imperial. It's so much more accurate. Like it's measuring dry goods by weight and liquid goods by volume. Like it's pretty smart. Like
we use cups over here.
Yeah, we gotta use.
How many cups is that in ounces?
Exactly.
8 ounces. How many cups? Well, and the thing is that a book that took 9 years to and I saw like on Letterman where she was talking about she was like, oh, I want to make this souffle, and in order for me to get it right in the book, I had to make it over 30 times. And then eventually I got it, and she told about how it bubbled up and touched the top of the stove and came through the rack, and how it just would fall apart. And eventually she got it just right. And then the conversion, something didn't work. Had to go back and fix it up.
Yeah, I think like a souffle is it's a very delicate deal, and so you need all the stuff. It has to be as accurate as possible, and that does not translate to cups and tablespoons.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Well, and that's something that was, I guess I just didn't know about that. I didn't think that they had a different measuring system over there. They totally do.
Yeah, and it depends on what you do, but like a lot of recipes you do by imperial, like if I was a pastry chef in a kitchen now, everything is weighed. You use imperial you use metrics, like you use the actual thing because you're trying to do a science project anytime you're trying to make a baked good, so like you got to be accurate. And so in professional settings, like we use that here, but not at home, So it is a whole thing that chefs have to do behind the scenes if they want to share a recipe with someone, like considerations like that have to come into play.
Well, and that was something that was raved about Julia, was that she was so good
Mm-hmm.
So good at that.
You know why? Because like if you think about the analytical mind it would take to categorize those documents and all those names and all of that stuff, and her ability like to hold through and keep making that souffle even though she fucked it up 29 times or whatever, you know, keep going, do it one more time, get it right, like, you know, and it takes a certain amount of diligence, you know, passion, and like just the tenacity to just keep trying until you get it right, like, you know. It's super inspirational, you know, like it's really cool. And yeah, I really admire that about her.
Well, and that's one reason why I started getting excited about this, is because I had no idea. I mean, Granny used to have Julia on, you know, because everybody who watched TV knew about Julia Childs. I mean, everybody be watching it like Thanksgiving, you know, and they'd be running that. And it just never came across my mind, like, why is she so famous and world renowned? And it's truly because she's just sort of an extraordinary person. Like, a lot of history gives credit and pays a lot of attention to people like Alexander the Great, you know, who were great, some of the best conquerors the world's ever seen. But, you know, I think that Julia is just one of those indomitable spirits.
Definitely.
Just because she didn't start her whole cooking career until she was like 32.
Yeah, after she had already had like a whole other career, you know, like it was.
Yeah, and just found something she really loved and got a hold of it and had fun and made money. And
the brilliant part of Julia Child to me is not just that she had the like gall and tenacity to like do cooking when they didn't want her there, and to write a cookbook and try that, you know, try and true her recipes, and then write them in a book form. But then to have her show be like, make all of that stuff so approachable to, you know, to people who watch the show, who they would watch it and be like, oh, if I take notes and get this recipe, like I can make this, you know. And like at the time, you know, people were doing that, like doing lots of weird stuff with Jell-O and stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, some terrible things they did with that Jell-O.
Yeah, if you consider stuff like that iceberg, like a iceberg lettuce with the banana sticking out of it, with a pineapple ring around it, like a just looks like a cock ring or whatever. Like that's where we were at. And like Julia Childs comes on and is like, you should braise beef, it's delicious. And people were like, what? I can do that? And
yeah, it's like, oh well, I thought all we had was Jell-O molds. It's like,
yeah, people were like, but aspic though. And she was like, nah, you can do better.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's serious, right? And you know, okay, so we moved on from that book. She actually released a second volume of Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And that took 9 more years.
Yeah.
9 more years.
Yeah.
She's devoted 18 years to writing 2 cookbooks.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's amazing. And from what I understand, those books are still referenced.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like they're kind of the gold
Not
standard.
only are they referenced, but if you look at, let me look over, what is it? Oh, Joy of Cooking, which is one of my all-time favorite cookbooks. If you were to talk to like Rambauer or whatever that lady's last name is, if you were to talk to the people who wrote Joy of Cooking, like, yeah, she was absolutely totally an influence, you know. And it's and I reference Joy of Cooking because it is like a encyclopedic kind of a cookbook, like Mastering the art of French cooking was. Like it's like you can find a recipe for almost anything in Joy of Cooking. Like anything you can think of, you can find it. Like there's a beef bourguignon recipe in there. It's pretty close to her recipe. And there's just everything is there, anything you could think of is in there. And it took them years to make that one too. So like, all I'm saying is that Julia Childs, her, like the thoroughness and everything, that it took to get her to those cookbooks, that style has been like referenced and influenced cookbooks, like, still to this day. I'm trying to think.
Oh, absolutely. It's sort of like she kind of developed the standard.
Yeah.
Because she was just such a trailblazer.
Mm-hmm.
All these things were just sort of things she set out to do. And one thing, okay, so that was 1965. She's got the second volume published.
Uh-huh.
In 1966, she gets an Emmy.
Yeah.
And she's on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah. Totally.
In 66.
Yeah. That's like a total badass. Like there weren't a lot of men or a lot of women in that light.
How many chefs made Time magazine in 66 or 65?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Probably not very
man
many.
or woman.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who. But this is just an extraordinary person we're talking about because of just how she showed so many people, and she had these shows on public television that a lot of people got a hold of and watched those for a long time. And while I'm on that, she was also had a very moral component to her. She loved public television.
Yep.
And she would do like NBC or CBS kind of Letterman or whatever. But she wouldn't do Food Network. She didn't want to do any of the commercial networks because she believed in public broadcasting.
Yep.
So that right there just opens a little door to my heart.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
someone with morals and scruples, she's not after just the money. It's like obviously she's well paid because we're talking about 66 and 67. The French government, for educating people about French food, gave her the highest medal that could be bestowed by the president of France.
Oh yeah, France loved her. Yeah, she was beloved.
And it's because she was just she was doing what she wanted to do. She was showing the world how to make good food and not put crap in a Jell-O mold.
Yep.
Well, we've got a guest join us. We got Seth Milstein, another comedian, has come by.
Hello. I heard there was free food here. So I drove my car here.
Well, there is...
I am a comedian.
There is definitely free food here. It's going to be great. It's just came out of the oven, the beef bourguignon. She's resting. And
I'm letting it steep.
Yes.
All of my culinary knowledge is based on things I've read on ramen packets.
Oh no.
It's bad. I make a bean, peanut butter, and honey sandwich.
Sounds delicious.
Did you ever watch Julia Childs?
My mom did, and had the cookbook.
Yes.
And so yeah, we definitely ate stuff that was inspired by her mastery of the culinary arts. But no, I never chose to. I think I saw that movie, Julia and Julia.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Yeah, she just died.
Yeah.
The
writer,
the other Julia.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, she did at 49 years old.
Yeah, that's too young.
Like, yeah, that is too young.
That's soon.
I know, it's way too soon for that to be cool. Yeah.
Well, just to keep it on a nice downward slope, we were talking about she got an award from the French government in 1967.
Right.
Or in 1967, she also had breast cancer.
Yes.
And
she beat it?
Yeah, well,
For a while.
Yeah.
She had the double
Not
mastectomy.
ultimately.
Yeah.
Not ultimately.
And
But,
and that was something interesting about her is that she just didn't tell anybody. She just moved through it and kept doing her thing.
no, I heard,
Never
have you
talked
guys-
about it,
have
really.
You guys talked about. I heard that she was a spy or something.
She was employed by the OSS, which was the
England's-
earliest days of. No, it was
Oh,
it was the
American?
U.S. Yeah,
It was the earliest days.
It
of
was the
CIA.
precursor
Yeah.
to the CIA, yeah.
yeah, and she cataloged stuff.
Okay.
Like she filed, what do you call it? Documents, like secret documents.
Top secret documents.
Yeah, and she's best known for keeping track of like 10,000 soldiers.
Oh wow.
Like, yeah.
Oh, while we're back on the stuff that she did while she was helping, like, enlisted in the military or working with the OSS, she was in China, and there was, like, this banquet to be held, and there were these passes handed out that were invitations. Well, there was only supposed to be, like, 40 of these invitations, but she made a way to copy those and sent out, like, 1,500 of them. And so, like,
that was the first Lollapalooza.
yeah. Well, she just managed to, like, cause dismay amongst the ranks, just
That's
through.
amazing.
I love a little like creative anarchy.
That's so great.
Well, we were talking about how she's just kind of one of these legendary people. She's just like a really strong personality. I mean, Alexander the Great is the example I used, but this is just a person who was able to come through and really drive it home, like that they're just going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And not enough credit.
Well, she's led a life.
It was impressive.
Yeah, it's crazy, like how some people have just had all these stages of their life and were remarkable in all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Well, let's see. So she always stayed busy, she took care of her husband, Paul, and like at some point she had to put him into a nursing home.
Yeah.
And
he died like 10 years before she did, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah, I guess he passed away in 1944. And
94.
Oh yeah, 94. Sorry, that's my dyslexia there. But she was with him, and he eventually had to go to a nursing home. And if you hear that rustling, that's because there's some food preparation going on.
I gotta finish the parsley. I made
It's
the
a
beef
parsley
bourguignon.
situation.
Yes,
which is
parsley
also the name
situation.
of my favorite jam band. The parsley situation.
And that's strangely very appropriate as well. And I'm trying to get us back on the back on
to
the
where?
timeline that I have here.
Oh, yeah.
But I can't really read the notes, so it's kind of
It's like, well, okay, so 68.
1994. Paul passed away,
Gotcha.
right? But the thing is sometime after that she started dating again in her 80s.
Yeah.
In her 80s, there's a guy named Roy Daly, and that was just something she just always kept moving. She's in her 60s
fucking
and 70s.
Julia Child, like
Yeah.
yeah, she's a hot piece of tall ass.
Well,
She's got awards at the Yin Yang. She's like, she can cook a meal, like
she was
total badass.
awarded the French Legion of Honor medal. Let me see here. She got in 2001. Her kitchen was dismantled and moved to the Smithsonian.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah, they did
That's
that.
pretty dope.
Bit by bit, they took
Yeah.
her kitchen. The what we should also mention too is her kitchen is when we say her kitchen, it wasn't her kitchen in New York. It was her kitchen in France, like out of her and I'm pretty sure it was.
You'd think it would be the set or whatever, like the one that she cooked in on the show.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
Oh, was that in France?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was.
Well, that was,
assumed it was in New York
she
because
had
of PBS.
several shows, and and so it was both. But but I think that the what's in the Smithsonian though is the one that was in France.
What if it's both kitchens, and if you were
It
to
could
pull a
be.
piece
Maybe it
off, there
is.
was another kitchen underneath?
I think I don't know exactly, but that's the one that was. She cooked and did all the filming and everything in her kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But you're right though, because she did do one of the shows that she did was in New York too. I don't know, but
that was the real shit. That wasn't like when you came to like the Vice kitchen to
oh yeah,
show how you
totally.
make a weird sandwich or whatever.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier too, about how like she was a proponent person for PBS.
Yeah.
And wasn't about that like Food Network lifestyle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was about that like PBS life. She wanted the real people of the world to be able
Well, it was
to
also
have access to her show.
It was pre Food Network, most
Yeah.
of that stuff. A lot
Yeah.
because she was
But
in the
but
80s,
later,
you know?
even later when there was Food Network and there were other cable channels and stuff like
one could say Food Network was inspired by Julia Child's show. Like,
shit, yeah.
Well, there's no way it wasn't.
yeah.
She was the original.
The other thing too is about the cooking shows that were on PBS when cooking shows became a thing. Like like her influence was so like if you look at like Frugal Gourmet, which came out not until the 80s,
Right.
That which we shouldn't talk about him too long. I think he diddled someone or did something weird.
Are we talking about Alton Brown or whatever?
No.
Wait, who was that?
Frugal Gourmet, I can't think of his name. But he was somehow a creep. I remember that there was a scandal when I was a kid. I used to get home from school and I would watch Julia Child, and then they would have Justin Wilson, who was like a Creole chef, and he would say,
Oh
"Hoo-wee!"
yeah.
Remember that guy?
He was like the precursor to Emerald,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, And he was like, yeah,
but he looked more like Colonel Sanders.
He did. Yes, that's him. That's how I know you know who Justin Wilson is. And then Frugal Gourmet would come on, and that would be like you would watch two old shows, and then this would be like the new episode of Frugal Gourmet. And I would always be like, okay, I'm gonna go watch
Frugal
cartoons
Gourmet was
now.
like the Anthony Bourdain.
He
at that
wishes.
time.
He wishes. But
Well, she was
He was the bad
first.
boy.
She was like really the one who started the whole cooking thing on
Exactly.
television.
that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. So all these other chumps came after, and they should pay homage to. That's probably not the right way to say that. It's not the French way. But it was.
They should play homage.
Yeah, you know what movie I'm probably thinking of. But check this out. In 2002, she was the first woman to be inducted into the Culinary Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And in 2003, awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Yeah. Wow.
By old George W. there. 2003. She was on TV through her whole 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Always
We talked
working.
earlier about how it took her, like the first cookbook, it took her 9 years to write. The second cookbook, another 9 years to write it. But then after that, right? But then after that,
18 years.
there's I don't even know. There's countless cookbooks that she co-authored with people or, influenced or chimed in or sorry about that. I didn't expect that to happen.
Now we all know what your ringtone is.
I'll probably have to take
Pee-wee's
that
Playhouse.
out.
I'm sorry.
You shouldn't have to apologize for that.
I agree.
That's so much doper. I just every phone I bought, I put on silent the moment I buy it, and then it never comes off. So.
Well, I
That's
just got
creative.
this one, so clearly I need to put it on silent. So yeah, whoops. Sorry about that one.
We can still continue about.
Okay.
Did you guys know that she was actually she had an honorary degree from Harvard, Boston University, Bates College, Rutgers, and Smith College.
Well, she actually attended Smith College, but it doesn't surprise me. Like,
well, those were awarded for her work in the culinary education industry.
I'm trying to get like big enough with comedy that my high school gives me an honorary diploma. Like I don't have to go back to do any classes.
Well, you're on this podcast now, and we'll try to give you a
taking
You're well on your way.
All right,
the Manning bump.
Let's give a shout out to your high school because I'm sure I got a lot of fans there.
I don't think
back in New York.
I wouldn't go back there. I wouldn't go back to
No,
my
I wouldn't
high school
go back
either.
to high school.
Nah.
I just want them to like just be like, all right, well, here you go.
All right.
You don't have to take that GED test after all.
Here, we should watch some Julia Childs and maybe see if you can learn something there. We got.
You're keeping us on track. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
I'm
you
doing the
are.
best I can.
It's great. There actually are on YouTube. There's the old '60s show, like the first show. You can find it on YouTube. I watched the Beef Bourguignon episode before I made it tonight because
I
that's
watched
what you do.
Several YouTube videos, and like one with Letterman. You know, there was actually one where they asked her about McDonald's.
Weird.
And yeah, I know. I was like, well, I need to know what Julia thinks of McDonald's. I mean, who wouldn't at this point?
What did she say?
Well, she was like, I really enjoyed their fries until the whole health thing made them change their oil, and you can't use beef tallow anymore. And then she's like, well, I didn't care for it after that.
Well, they were dead back then.
Yeah.
And everyone
They were like
died.
savory candy.
I would love to have French fries fried in beef tallow. I've never had that.
Amazing. Yeah.
Doesn't that sound
We
great?
don't get to do that anymore.
Because we're over 40, Seth? Is that why?
No, I meant like in
our own home, we can do what we want.
Yeah, we can do what we want. But
Is
I'm
that-
saying like they don't make them that way.
Is that what trans fats are?
So-
As beef tallow?
Probably.
Or what? Is that what you can't have that?
Yeah, I don't
You know-
No, actually, trans fats are hydrogenated stuff.
I think beef
stuff that's
tallow is
been-
called pure fat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
Who
beef
knows?
shortening.
Yeah.
That's only funny to me.
My dad managed a Hardee's when I was a kid,
I
and I
remember
remember
Hardee's.
the way like they would just take this clump of white goo and put it into the fryer.
Yeah, and then it would melt.
It would melt into oil, yeah, and it was just lard basically.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Butter,
That's how you make
butter
it taste
and
good.
fat is
Yeah.
what. Yeah, and Julia is quoted on saying that.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
gosh,
insane that did she die of a heart attack?
yeah. I believe that's what happened. She like passed away in her bed August 13th, 2004, and she was 90. It was like 2 days before her 92nd birthday.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And-
Like you could eat whatever you want back then because all the ingredients were like real ingredients. You know,
And you had to like walk your ass around to go get them.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like
Oh, have
you
you
didn't get
seen?
to Instacart and shit.
Did you see? Yeah, speaking.
All right.
Well, and why that's so funny is because if you look at the kitchens that she had to cook in when she was starting all of this, they were teeny
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah.
And there was one where they talked about how the kitchen was downstairs and the dining room was upstairs. So
Yeah.
she'd have to make stuff, take it upstairs, enjoy, and then run back down, get stuff ready, take it up there. You know, and she's
Yeah.
6'2"
yeah,
Yeah.
in a tiny little kitchen.
yeah, bumping
Yeah.
her head on everything.
Must
Yeah,
have.
and with men, I guarantee there were men laughing at her. You know, like they
Ain't
weren't
nobody-
helping. You know, like they
don't
didn't
know.
want her there. You know,
Maybe they were quiet because they wanted some food. That could have been.
It's
I
so
mean,
weird to me
I
that
don't know.
like
That's a
chefs
good
have
question,
always been
really.
thought of as men,
Uh-huh.
but like every human has been raised by women
Right.
cooking their food. You
Yeah.
know, like for centuries. You know,
Yeah.
Even lions.
Millennia.
Who decided?
Millennia.
You know, like who decided that men could have professional
I'll
kitchens?
bet it
Like
was men.
it's such a bullshit. You know, it's bullshit.
That sounds like some shit we'd pull.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does, frankly.
Like just out of the blue, we were just like, I bet we could cook better than them. And then we just watched them forever. And then we were like, all right.
Yeah. And
now
then,
let's say that we're the kings of this.
okay.
Fucking assholes.
And then I'll just open up one of the 2 volumes of Julia Child's book from, from the other side of the pond. And then I'll ask you to decode that recipe into American cups and tablespoons and see how smart you are then, Mr. Man. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, that's one reason.
We would be eating those McDonald's fries we just mentioned if that was my job.
Exactly.
Yeah, well.
Be like, guys, I put too much tallow in.
Delicious.
Well, she was on like over 375 television shows, like of episodes, I guess, and authored over wrote or co-wrote over 17 cookbooks.
Yeah. And I haven't even written one.
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't even cooked
it's
one
super
meal.
hard. I don't have 9 years to devote to writing a book. Like even if I wrote a book about myself, I'd be like, damn, 6 months. I need to finish this crap. Like I've had enough. I don't want to do.
I don't know how long it takes to write a book. We should ask Chad.
Chad
Hurst Sharp.
Yeah, he writes books.
Yeah.
He'll write some.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I'll have to have him on the pod.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll talk about his book.
I think it's a good idea. It's like you can buy it on Amazon.
Yeah.
Look it up, listeners. Chad Hurst, Jane Lit Sharp.
Yep.
What's
on
the name of the
Amazon.
book?
There's like 6 books to choose from. And like seriously, like he's written like 6 books and they're all available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And like I can't think of the titles of them, but the one that he wrote most recently got him best writer in the Eugene Weekly.
Mm-hmm.
This the same episode as
I think it was
I Got Comedian.
Was it short stories, fictional short stories?
Yeah, or like a novella or something like that, I think. Yeah. Just a little side note.
Yeah. Also,
check it out.
very funny comedian.
Yeah. Also, loves Julia Child. No, I don't know.
We can't confirm that one. But, one of the things that I did, shout out to Chad Hurst, of course. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Or no, I'll talk with Chad
You
Hurst.
can take this all out of
I
the
think,
pod, too,
I don't know. Maybe I don't think we're taking shit out.
Okay.
I think we're going to roll it. Because
I think
this
you
is
should trim
fun.
the guest. That guy's a dud.
Well, and this is why, all right? And I'm going to, this is why. Julia was a very personable person.
Mm-hmm.
She always, made time and remembered people. And, you know what? This conversation right here is a dinner table conversation.
Hell yeah.
While the Beef Bourguignon is resting.
Yeah, she's totally,
We
she's the Sam Miller,
Well, yeah,
culinary world.
I love those people. Like I take note of the. Like I feel like Dolly Parton's like that too.
Oh, definitely.
Like she would just be sweet to every single person she met because she doesn't know any other way.
Yeah.
Well, and we've been talking about Julia's life, and the one thing that I have yet to mention is how much of a partier she was.
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
She never appeared on the TV shows drunk, but she loved gin and wine and was always drinking and entertaining.
Yeah.
And she just right up
You
until
could watch her. She would take the cooking sherry a little bit.
Yes,
and
she
you
would.
could watch her get rosier in the cheeks throughout an episode
Yeah.
here and there.
And she would
but never to drunk.
She
know?
would
No,
always
of
talk
course
about
not.
what wine to pair stuff with or cocktail, whatever. Like she always thought of everything.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You know who that makes me think of is Martha Stewart. Like for me, like it's almost impossible to have a conversation about Julia Child without talking a little bit about Martha Stewart, you know?
But did Julia Child have a show with Snoop Dogg?
Right?
That should
Right.
Snoop Dogg wishes.
That would have happened.
Snoop Dogg wishes, right? Yeah, for sure.
You
Stayed on
think
TV a
Martha
little bit
Stewart's
longer,
some-
I think that would have happened.
You think Martha Stewart's something? Well, come on, Snoop.
Right.
Imagine if you got to hang out with
Snoop collabs
Julia.
with everybody.
Totally.
Yeah, Willie
He's gonna be on this
Nelson.
podcast next
He's
week.
gonna be.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah, tune in next Thursday for Snoop Dogg. We're gonna talk
We're
about
gonna talk
hip hop
the
history.
of faux shizzle.
Oh,
God.
yeah.
You can have it in my kitchen again if you want.
We might have to come back. I like your kitchen.
Thank you.
It smells like beef bourguignon.
My son just told me about a video that he saw where Snoop Dogg ran out of papers or blunt wraps or whatever, and then he bought an entire 18-wheeler truck full of them. Like
Whoa,
he bought like a metric ton
That's a choice.
of blunt wraps. But if you're Snoop Dogg, you have to get your blunt wraps.
You
at
like these,
Costco.
Snoop?
Yeah.
How many can I get you?
Yeah.
A whole
I'll
truckload?
take a metric ton.
Yeah.
All right. Well, give us a couple weeks. Have this box in the meantime, and we'll get you,
That's wild.
your shipping and handling will be about $1,500. And then you have to pay the driver. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we have come to the end of where we're at. We talked about the hero, the legend that is Julia Childs.
And
And
I was going to say Snoop Dogg.
that's another episode,
All right.
Seth.
I forgot. That's the next one.
Yeah, I called up my homie and said, "Hey, buddy, why don't you come and do my podcast in Eugene, Oregon,
Yeah.
in Jen's kitchen?"
Yeah. I love it. I can't wait for this to happen. It's gonna be great.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on to talk about Julia Child while I make a Julia Child recipe. And I just want, the only thing that I would add is I remember watching the show, like watching reruns of the old 60s show when I was a kid. And she would talk about, I don't remember what she was talking about, but we would spend the rest of, me and my friend who watched it, we would spend the rest of the day like doing her voice. And, I would be trying to help my grandma in the kitchen, like doing Julia Child voice. And it was a total blast, So thanks, Julia Child. Bless up or whatever.
Yeah. Cheers to Julia.
Cheers to Julia
Yeah,
Child.
we're
Yeah,
gonna
there
get a
we go.
little cheers on. There we go.
Yeah. Clink,
To
clink.
Julia. And Seth, you got any closing remarks?
I think she was a dope lady. I didn't know
Super
a lot
dope.
about her. I just knew like the stuff that seeps in through pop culture or whatever. But like whenever I did see her, I was the one thing that I think was awesome about her is you could tell how passionate she was about food.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, like, I don't need a fancy dish. I just need like somebody who loves making that dish.
Yeah,
and
totally.
that's dope. And she loved making food, and that was great.
Yeah.
Oh, that was what she made her life about.
Mm-hmm.
And we all do the voice and whatever, but I never really thought about the fact that she was on TV and everybody has it in their mind, about Julia Childs. And she was on TV and she was 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
80.
Not
and
the whole
we're-
time, but
well, not- I
at
mean-
one point, for sure.
It was probably 80s when I was watching.
Sure, yeah.
And, it's like I never really conceptualized the idea that person who's on TV cooking stuff, I figure, she's just good at cooking. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, she has an amazing legacy that she built from 1912 when she was born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what an incredible person. So I'm so glad that I get to come over and eat some of the food that you've made, because I'm really looking forward to it.
Good.
And
we've been talking about it for like an hour, so
yeah, almost.
I hope it's gonna be good.
Almost. And it's totally appropriate that we got another one to come and eat some of this wonderful
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
And I think it's time to do that. So, hey, this has been History and Whatever. And hit me up, jm3e.pod@gmail.com.
Yeah, bon vivant.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll see you next time.